Hello, and welcome to the April 2021 edition of What's Jessica Reading Now, our YA themed program where I go over and review some of the latest YA books that I have read. My name is Jessica. Obviously, I'm a clerk here at the Maston Public Library and self-proclaimed bibliophile. So this month, over the past month, I read a couple of books that happen to have the curious quality of reminding me of books that I'd read in the past. So I decided to make this into a program that is a little different than I normally do, called If You Like This, Read That. So I'm going to take some either young adults or sometimes even juvenile level books that you might be familiar with. And if you like those books or certain aspects of those books, but you would like a more updated, grown-up version of them, I'm going to give you some recommendations on what you can read. So to start off, and some of these books are also, just so you know, they're not very new. Some are a little bit newer than others, but some have been out for a while, so you might be familiar with them. But these are the books I read recently. So I didn't read new releases much this month, but they were books that were new to me. So if you are familiar with a little children's classic known as The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or in the series completion as The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, then you're probably familiar with the story of 4 children who go into a wardrobe and find their way into a magical land called Narnia. In this particular book, those children stay for a very long time till they are adults. And when they find their way back through the wardrobe into our world, they are children again. So that's a theme of this book, in that time moves differently in Narnia. But it's a pretty popular theme, this idea of going into a magical land, and that is separate and different from our world. The Chronicles of Narnia series has 8 books total. There's also several movies as well. So if you haven't read the books, you might be familiar with the films. So if you like those, if you remember them maybe fondly from your childhood, like I did, I read them when I was in 5th grade, I believe. And I was absolutely enthralled, absolutely enchanted with this story. And the way my library worked at the time at my school is when you went into middle school, you couldn't go back into the elementary school library, and our high school library didn't have them. So I only ever read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when I was a child, and I loved it and I wanted to read more, but I didn't have access to them. So when I attempted to read them again as an adult, I found them a little too young for me. I found them a little too basic. The themes in the language I found a little juvenile for me, so I wasn't as interested then. But if you do like those themes and you do like the idea of going into a magical land, I actually have 2 book recommendations. One is a little lighter. If we were going by like a movie rating system, I would say the first one I'm going to recommend is maybe like a PG, whereas the other one is a little more dips into outright, you're getting into R rating at times. So I have a couple recommendations for you. So if you like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, a wonderful standalone to try. This is a new author I recently discovered, and I actually read 2 of her books this past month. I'll talk about the other one in a future program. But her name is Laura Weymouth, and this is her debut novel called The Light Between Worlds. And this is a novel about a young girl who is 16 and grappling with her desire to be home, basically, in another land. So in this book, 3 children, again, very much like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, set during World War II. In this case, though, rather than being sent to the countryside to get away from the bombings in London, these children are still at home with their parents in London. And when a bombing occurs, they go into a shelter, into a bomb shelter, and basically wish themselves someplace safe, and they end up in this other enchanted land, very much so like Narnia. Instead of a lion, there is this stag named Service, and you are getting through the narrative. There will be no spoilers, but through the beginning of the book, you're getting the fact that these three children had actually remained in this alternate world for 5 years. And now the character has, when they come back home, they're the same age when they left, which was 11, for the main character is 11, and she has to, relive those 5 years of growing up. And the whole time she is sort of longing she feels like she really belongs at this other world, which is not the same feeling that her brother and sister have. So this particular author I have just absolutely fallen in love with. I think she has a very great writing style. It's not complicated prose, but it is at times beautiful and lyrical. She has another book called A Treason of Thorns, which I also read. As I said, I'll talk about that in a future episode, but that I read that one first, which actually inspired me to read this one. This is a standalone novel, so it's not a series. It is just a one and done standalone. It's very easily readable. It's a very quick read, and it was really enjoyable to scratch that itch of sort of like that magical land, and the whimsy, and also the darkness that can reside there. But this is a light dark. This is a gray dark. This is something that you can still, if you don't like things that are real hardcore, like we had to do a gritty reboot of something, then you can still enjoy this book. The next book, on the other hand, the other book I would recommend if you're looking for something a little more intense, a little more adult, is The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This book it's been touted as Harry Potter for adults, but then again, I'm discovering that anything that has to do with like a sort of magical education setting is being touted as Harry Potter for adults. So the characters in this book, the main character's name is Quentin. He is I can't remember if it's like graduate studies level, postgraduate studies level. He's fully a young man. He has already been to college to some degree. He's not a teenager. He is in his early 20s, as are his peers. And one day he thinks he's going to an interview about a particular school, which he is, but he finds out that this school actually resides in its sort of own space and time, and it is a college for magicians. There are also elements in this book of a series of books Quentin read as a child that bear a stark resemblance to the Chronicles of Narnia, except they're called something else, and the magical land is called something else. And you find out that that magical land exists. It is a much darker and brutal place than any sort of whimsical child's tale. So this is a series. There are 3 of them. You might have also seen there is a television show. I can't speak to the television show because I never watched it, but I will say that this book was slower than I was expecting. It's the magic is not the whimsical kind of magic. It's not even necessarily that the magic is a dark kind of magic. It's almost a little bit boring. And I know that doesn't sound very good, but they really make it realistic that you have to, it's not like Harry Potter where, they're going to school, but you never really get much of the education of it. Like, they have to write essays and they have to go to classes, but you never really get like that it's difficult, that magic is something more difficult to learn than, say, regular math or science. In this book, the author really brings that home, that magic is something that needs to be studied, and it is intricate and it is detailed, and it can be downright boring, and you have to grind your way through it, because if you're going to be proficient at it, you really have to put in the work. So but like I said, this one is definitely darker. It's definitely more adult. I would say like this goes into like I said, if we were going for a movie rating, I would say this is more like a PG, and this one is more R. So if you like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, then again, I would recommend The Light Between Worlds by Laura Weymouth, or the Magician series by Lev Grossman. The next book that I read, I had a lot of fun with, and it was a very short little book. And it reminded me strangely of a beloved classic, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. So, full disclosure, I am not a sci-fi fan. I just, it's not a genre that ever clicked with me. I'm definitely way more of a fantasy fan, or way more of a historical fiction, or contemporary fiction even, but I'm not very big on sci-fi. So I can't speak to, there might be other books that resemble the book I read this month more so than The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but this is where my mind went back to because this is my experience. So if any of you have ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or if you haven't read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I highly recommend it. It is a fun, pretty absurd ride in which the Earth is destroyed very close to the beginning of the book, and then our rather clueless protagonist, Arthur Dent, is thrown into a galaxy that he never knew existed and doesn't understand, with his, I was trying to remember his name, with his guide, Ford Prefect. So basically, you take your average Joe, who wakes up one morning and gets told the Earth is about to be destroyed to make room for an intergalactic highway. I'm actually an alien. I like you. I'm going to take you with me. We're going to hitchhike off this planet, and then wackiness just keeps ensuing from there. One of my favorite parts of this book is there is a robot who is depressed. And that was always one of the things I remembered. He had some really funny lines. There was a movie not too many years ago in which he was voiced by the absolutely fantastic Alan Rickman, which I think just made me love that character all the more. And so that's what really brought to mind when I read All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first book in a series. We have books 1 through 5. I think there are 4 novellas leading up to a novel. So it is a very slim book. It is only 149 pages. As you can see, the book itself is not very big. It's almost paperback size, just a little bit bigger. So it is a very quick read. I read this in, I think, one night. The series is called the Murderbot series. Now, Murderbot is a sort of self-aware security unit robot or construct, because Murderbot is part organic components and part technological components, not made from a person though. They're cloned organic components, and you find out right away that Murderbot has hacked its governing unit, the thing that basically says you have to follow these commands. And and the danger being that if an AI can hack the module that keeps it compliant, most people would expect it to go rogue and to maybe go on some sort of horrible homicidal spree, whereas Murderbot just wants to download all the media files and watch television, and continues to do its security job, but is very bored and very, very sassy. And through this first novella, the Murderbot is basically found out that it is aware, and then Murderbot has to work with the humans that it's been hired by to discover what's going on this planet that they're on. So it's really quick, it's really fun. There's a reason that it calls itself Murderbot, and it's not a homicidal robot. In fact, it's one of those books where the artificial intelligence robot is almost more human at times than most humans, and so it was just a really enjoyable read. I would call this, if fantasy has magic systems that people call like hard magic systems, as in it has a lot of rules and a lot of structure, and soft magic systems in which magic is more sort of not explained as well or free flowing, then I would say that this is what I would team a soft sci-fi system. So it's not a lot of technology, it's not a lot of tech speak, it's more character driven and character focused, and the tech parts are in there to serve the story, but it's not, it can be overrun pretty easily if that's what the story needs, sort of thing. But it's a very character driven story. I've read the first 2 novellas. I'm on the 3rd one right now. I am still enjoying them. We have all 5 here at the Maston Library. So if you like sassy, slightly depressed robots and you're looking for a really enjoyable read, I recommend, if you like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, give the Murderbot Diaries a try. The first book is All Systems Red. Or if you haven't read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I definitely recommend reading this, because I read it in high school, but it's one of those ones you can still enjoy as an adult. The last one is, we're gonna pull out, we all know this one, don't we? Dun, 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 Twilight. So I read Twilight before Twilight was a thing. I worked at a bookstore in which you could take the books home, kind of like a library, and read them as long as you brought them back in sellable condition. And I picked up this little book with this intriguing cover called Twilight, because it said it was about vampires, and basically brought it back, read it, brought it back, and said, that was a thing. And then it exploded and became the monster it is today with its own movies and its books. And the book now is also much beleaguered. People talk about that it really wasn't the best, or the relationships, or the characterization, or even the syntax of the writing. But for anyone who maybe did read Twilight, and whether you enjoyed it at the time, or maybe you didn't enjoy it and you thought, I'd like that story, but maybe a little more mature, a little more grown up, then I would recommend what I read recently, which is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I picked this book up because there is a TV series now in which people I knew had watched, and they said it was really good. So I have now watched the first season of the TV series. I will cop to the fact that I like the TV series better than the book. I know it's blasphemy, but I did enjoy the TV series better, and I can't wait to watch season 2. But that said, this is Twilight for grown-ups, basically, or not really. I mean, it's different than Twilight, but it reminded me very much so of Twilight, the relationship dynamics, except that the main character, Diana, is not really a wishy-washy kind of pushover like Bella Swan is in Twilight. In this book, you have the protagonist, Diana Bishop, who is a professor and who is working and studying at Oxford. She calls up this book from the Stacks, which is their private collection of very old materials that can't be taken out of the library, so you have to have a librarian come and get them and call them up. She takes out this book, Ashmole 782, an alchemical text, so a text about alchemy, and doesn't think anything of it. At first, when she realizes there's an enchantment on it, the enchantment breaks basically as soon as she touches it, and she's really not that interested, to be honest. She doesn't. She is a witch from a very long line of witches, but she doesn't like to use her powers, doesn't like to acknowledge them because of the murder of her parents. So she sends the book back. She doesn't really think much of it until all these other creatures start showing up. One of them being a vampire named Matthew Claremont. And as you go through the book, Matthew and Diana start developing this relationship, and you find out that relationships between these different species, of which there are 3, or I guess 4 if you count humans. There's witches, vampires, demons, and humans. The relationship between the 3 supernatural species is forbidden. So to break that covenant, you then basically have a mark on your head. Your life is forfeit, basically. People are going to come after you to make this stop. So you've got this mystery of this book and why it is so important, why so many people are after it. You've got this forbidden relationship. You've got the power dynamics between this very old, very powerful vampire, this witch who is just learning her powers because now she's realizing that her life is in danger, and she kind of needs those powers that she has ignored the whole time. It is a very long book. It's, again, slower than I was expecting. It's not fast-paced. There's not a lot of action. There's a lot of sort of lingering over details. There's a lot of discussions of, there's a lot of atmosphere, basically. There's a lot of atmosphere with the places, the settings in Oxford, later in France. There's a lot about meals. There's a lot about wine. There's a lot of like sort of lingering over these details. I listened to this book mostly as an audiobook. It was a 25-hour long audiobook. So if you really want that sort of long, lingering atmospheric read, I definitely recommend A Discovery of Witches. This is the first in a trilogy. There is a 4th book too, which is about a side character. So if you would like a series that you can get into, really sink your teeth into, vampire pun, then I definitely recommend these. If you want a more grown-up version, like maybe you liked Twilight when you were younger, but it's just not your thing anymore, if you want the grown-up version, this is it, because you're dealing with people that these are established academics with a career. They're not teenagers. The teenage drama is absent in this one. So I definitely recommend A Discovery of Witches. I do also recommend the TV show. I thought it was fantastic. We do have the DVD here at Macedon. We are going to get season 2 as soon as it's available. So there you have it. That is my recommendations for this month. I wanted to do something a little different. If you'd had these young adult beloved classics that you read, but maybe you've grown up a little, or maybe you're just looking for something a little more mature, a little more sophisticated, those are my recommendations for this month. I hope you're all happy and healthy and enjoying the weather. It was snowing today in April, but hopefully it starts to get warmer from here on out, and you can all get out in the sunshine. And I will see you next month when I bring you my latest list of young adult reads. Bye.